Hi everyone, and welcome to this live session interview on making 2026 the year you win internal comms investment. We're trying to be the antithesis of do more with less, so how can we do more with more? I'm your host, Kaz Hassan, and I am joined by Joanna Parsons. Despite how we're both dressed, neither of us are Steve Jobs, but we are channeling today. We didn't sync on this either, but we are perfectly aligned. My name's Kaz, and I work for Unily. I look after our community and thought leadership. I'm also joined by Joanna Parsons. If you want to say a quick hello to our audience.
Yes, I'm Joanna. I'm the CEO of The Curious Route. I do training and community for internal comms professionals.
Excellent. And I've prepared some excellent questions based on getting internal comms investment. But just before we get there, a very quick introduction to Unily. If you haven't heard of us before, we drive organizational velocity through employee experience for the world's most iconic brands, from American Express, American Airlines, CVS Health, British Airways, Shell, etc. We have over 6 million users on our platform, and we've been in the game for 20 plus years, so very experienced. Now, today, I want to get straight in, and I've got lots of questions based on this report we worked on with Joanna. It was a pleasure to work with you on this, Joanna, to kind of really get to the nitty-gritty of how do we really support internal communicators to build better business cases and get the investment that's required for the great outcomes that we know we can achieve. Now, I wanted to start at the beginning. We do actually have a bit of a social competition, which you can engage with at any time. We have a $100 gift card up for grabs, or the equivalent based on wherever you are. And how can people get involved in that, Joanna?
Yes, well, I am a big fan of a giveaway around Christmas. So if you want 100 quid to buy yourself a present, you don't have to spend it on someone else. All we want you to do is take a picture of yourself as you're watching this and post it onto LinkedIn. Tag Unily and tag me. So all you're going to do is you're going to pick up your phone, swivel around like this, and take a picture of yourself. You can use that nice quote there or anything as we go through this session. And we will pick a winner next week, and Unily will send you 100 quid. It's that easy.
Perfect. Now, talking of this specific stat here, what it says here is that the lack of resources was a top cause for deteriorating well-being amongst internal communicators in 2025. So this was really what the crux of why we wanted to make this guide. Really, the problem of underfunded internal comms team doesn't seem to be going away, and it is having an impact on us. So my first question for you, Joanna, is that in the process of researching for this guide, what did you really learn about the state of internal communications today?
Well, if we think about what internal comms is really for when it comes down to the core of it, it's about getting people on the same page in an organization so that people know what's going on, they have the information to do their jobs, they understand what's expected of them, what they have to do. And when you think about internal comms like that, it's really easy to understand why it's critical to the functioning of any company, right? Mm-hmm. But if we think about how lots of organizations understand internal comms, they don't see it like that. Lots of companies still see it as just an internal postal service. You're just distributing messages here or there. Lots of companies still see it almost like an arts and crafts department, a service desk where you can get your pretty poster made or send me an email, publish a blog. So I think that speaks to kind of the relative immaturity of the function, that lots of organizations don't realize the power of it yet. And when I look at internal comms teams, one thing I see over and over is that the teams are often tiny. It's often one person trying to do everything by themselves, even in companies with thousands of employees. So people are often really exhausted, really burnt out. They're trying to do too much with too little. And over we see each year in reports like the State of the Sector report, every year internal communicators say that their biggest barriers to success are in some way related to lack of resources. So that could be not having the right tech, not having enough headcount, not having enough money. So this is a persistent theme that we see happening over and over and over again.
Now, you listed some common things that people want resources for, and I want to dive into that a bit later. But before we get into some of those, one of the things I'm interested in is this resource conversation doesn't seem to be going away. It seems like every year we continue to struggle and battle for every little bit that we can for that resource. What's your kind of assessment of why internal communicators really struggle to get the right investment, because it does seem like for a lot of organizations, workforce alignment is important, but we're still not getting the resource to support things like that.
Yeah, so I spoke to loads of internal comms professionals when I was researching this report because I really wanted to understand what is happening, because it's so interesting, because simultaneously we have two things that are true from the State of the Sector report. On one hand, we have the truth that lack of resources is the biggest barrier to success. And on the other hand, we have that writing a business case to get more resources is not a top priority for internal comms teams. And I just thought that's weird. Like there's something very curious there. Why are you not trying to solve this biggest problem?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked loads of comms pros, like, what is happening here? And the reasons, like, it's different for every company, right? Some people, if they're in an organization where they've just done a round of layoffs, they've done hiring freeze, they've told you you're not getting your bonus this year, then they're like, I'm not asking for money. It's not the right time. Fair enough. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Other people told me, and I heard this one a lot, they told me that they're too busy and that writing a business case to ask for more resources just felt like an extra job that they didn't have capacity for. They often said it felt like quite an overwhelmed task, and it seemed like even the words like business case, it sounds like a complex, difficult thing to do. I think that's one of the reasons I was so excited to write this guide. Like, let's make this simpler for people. Let's take that mystery out of it. And also related to that, quite a lot of people said, sure, I wouldn't know how to write a business case. No one's ever taught me how to do that. I wouldn't know what to put in it. I wouldn't know how to structure it. I wouldn't know how to ask for what I need. And then there was finally a group of people that had this sense of like futility almost of, I've asked before and they said no, I will never ask again.
Right.
Rather than maybe like, well, what happened that time? What feedback did you get? How can we improve that? How can you try again? Because maybe it's not a no, maybe it's a not yet. But there seems to be a range of reasons why people are not yet getting the resources that they need.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. The language point is interesting as well, because I think we talk about speaking the language of the business, but actually when it comes to things like business cases and thinking about how C-suite are starting to compute the language of what you're putting in that business case, that language is important not just to the workforce, but also upwards as you start to communicate the value of the function. Talking of that and kind of communicating the value of internal comms to the business, we want to do a quick poll here to understand when it comes to getting internal comms investment. We're keen to know who are the sorts of people you need to consider your organization. Is it your HR leader? Is it you're looking for tech investment and you need your IT leader or your CIO? Is it a CEO thing? Is it that you need to convince your CEO the value of that internal comms investment? Is it the purse holder, the CFO, or maybe you have somebody, even in your own function, it might be reporting into a CMO or a CCO. And we've got a little wildcard option in here that when Joanna and I were discussing beforehand, and some people just don't know who they need to convince to get that investment. So that could be a barrier as well. So do let me know who you need to convince to get that investment. I'll give you 5-10 seconds, and eventually we'll have the results come live up on screen, so you get to see how everyone's voted and whether you're aligned to that.
I've definitely been like in my earlier days of my career, I wouldn't have had a clue who was the approver of any business case. And sure, wouldn't that make it so hard to write it if you don't know who it's for? That's the heart of communication. Like, think about your audience.
Right. Yeah. And okay. So the results have come in here, and so actually a large percentage for the CEO. So it's sometimes not just about your direct leader or even the purse holder, but actually understanding the value is right at the top of the organization. Some for IT leader as well. So technology investments, and of course CFO. Okay, so let's switch back to the presentation. Talking of all of the C-suite and the leaders, one thing you did with this report that I thought was so cool was you got to speak to different C-suite executives to try and flip the script and understand from their perspective, how do they value internal comms? What are they expecting from internal comms when it comes to articulating value? And that's kind of supported with this Gallagher research, is that almost 60% of internal communicators feel a lack of support from senior leaders. And that's really the biggest barrier to their success. Can you tell me a little bit about what you learnt about how decision makers perceive the value of internal comms, and what can internal communicators watching actually do to help those unconvinced leaders see their value of the work?
Yeah, I felt this was really important because it's one thing to stay kind of like inside the comms bubble and just talk about ourselves to ourselves. But I wanted to step out of that a little bit and get the C-suite perspective on this, because I really needed to understand what would it take from their perspective to make a great killer business case to get an investment. The first thing I would say is that all of them recognize that communication is important. They never said that it wasn't. But often they felt that comms teams weren't asking in the right way, or they weren't framing things in the right way. Like, one thing that kept coming up in the conversations was, like, say, you're very focused just on what you want to do, and you're only talking about yourself and your team and your work. But your CFO or your CEO, whoever is reviewing this, they're going to be looking at your business case with the bird's eye view of the whole organization. And they're going to be thinking, like, is this absolutely mission critical? Do we have to invest in this now for the business to win? And they're going to be weighing it up against other people. All the other teams are asking for money as well. We can't all get it.
Right.
So you need to show that it's not just that your request is important for your team, but actually that it's important to the business. So this is, why we ran that poll. You need to know who's going to be approving or reviewing this, and what do they really care about? Can you link it to business goals to say it's not just good for the comms team, this is good for the business? Mm-hmm. Something else that I had a conversation with the CFO, and I was trying to persuade him. I didn't do a good job. Trying to persuade him that internal comms shouldn't be seen as a cost center, but actually we're driving a lot of like good outcomes in the business, mm-hmm. maybe not revenue directly. And he was very frank. He said, you'll never convince me that internal comms isn't a cost center. I will always see it that way, but it's good for you to know that, because like from a CFO's perspective, when you have a cost center function in the organization, they're always going to be trying to reduce that cost. So if you're trying to convince them to put more investment into that, your business case has to be really good. It has to be doubly good. And you have to show that there's going to be a return on that investment, that is going to be a good use of their money. And also just like to be thinking as well, from a CFO's perspective, if you think about the economy right now, like it's unpredictable, it's volatile. Their main thing is probably to mitigate risk, to keep the company safe, not spend any unnecessary money. So again, linking it back to the business, putting in some numbers and stats to show this is really crucially important. This will really help.
Yeah, okay. So you've spoken about speaking different like languages of the business there, and you kind of talk about with those C-suite leaders understanding what's top of mind for them and being able to pick what you're doing into what's on their plate. Something you mentioned in the report was speaking CEO. Can you explain to me a bit more about what you mean by that and how someone would be able to do that?
Yeah, sometimes I feel that, and I'm sure this happens in lots of industries, it's not just comms, but sometimes comms teams and C-suite leaders are speaking different languages. Comms teams often speak in the language of corporate communications. So we might be talking about engagement metrics and open rates and click rates and attendance and, all about the kind of the comms activities. But the C-suite don't speak that language, and they don't really care about that language. They think the language of business and the language of outcomes. They're thinking about revenue and profits and risk and retention and productivity and efficiency, these kinds of things. So you really need to think about, how am I framing this in their language and how am I appealing to what they care about? Because if you send in a business case that's all about, say you want to get a new tool or a piece of technology and you're just talking about the features of that or the dashboard that you can get or whatever, you need to make the link between what is that going to do for the business? How is that going to help the business be more efficient? How will it help the workforce be more productive? How will it reduce the money that it costs when people leave, when you don't want them to leave. So you just need to think about the language that you're using and to watch out for framing things in corporate communications language versus business language. That can help enormously.
That's a great point on tech investments as well, because especially when you're in the detail of understanding what features will drive what outcomes, a C-suite leader might not understand it that way. So you're going to have to really show what exponential outcomes will be driven by something, by technology that's above and beyond something else, because for them it might just seem like an internal comms tool. Whereas if you're looking for the differences that drive bigger outcomes, you have to make that link for them. Great point.
And that's something that we can do really well, right? Because that's storytelling, that's communicating. Like, I think sometimes we forget how good we are at this.
Yes.
Like writing a business case is just like writing, like persuasive writing exercise. Like we're good at this. So know your audience, know what they care about, and then like paint them a glorious picture of what the future will be like after you get this investment, what good it's going to do for the business. This will really help to get their attention.
Yeah, it's almost surfacing what we know is a core skill for us as internal communicators to be able to deliver that, but just for the right audience, right, in different terminology.
Yes.
So, give us a quick drink break here. We've got a second poll in here, trying to understand. We've articulated already some big barriers that when it comes to internal comms investment, but I'm keen to know from those of you watching, what do you see as the single biggest barrier to securing that investment? Is it having the right data to get that business case or make that compelling business case? Is it that leaders, we spoke about C-suite earlier, is it that they just don't see it the right way? Is it what Joanna mentioned earlier? Sometimes you have those internal communicators that they're too busy to create that case. So there's a few different options there. Let's take 10, 15 seconds. Let me know what you feel is the biggest barrier to securing internal comms investment.
Like, is there an option to click all of them? I definitely know some people that will click all of them.
Let's have a look and see what.
But like for people that are struggling with this, something I would say is like, you're not alone. Like so many people are struggling with this. And that's why this guide is here to help you. Like this gives you a kind of a step-by-step approach to make this whole thing easier, much easier.
Exactly. There's a really great template in there, which I love. And I was just thinking, this is like evergreen. You can continue to come back and like visit this. Okay, so data improving ROI is coming up top. And then the second thing is like trying to align what we do day to day and what resources are required for down to the bigger business priorities. Okay, so top one there is proving data and ROI. Let's go back to presentation because you'll be pleased to know that whilst there are lots of different barriers, I'm sure you resonate with many of them. Data and ROI is one that seems to come up. And in fact, you're not alone. The Gallagher data shows that only 47% of communicators are using measurement to influence leadership. So it is something that's a barrier for almost half of us. And so on that topic of measurement, I want to deep dive on metrics specifically. Joanna, what's the problem with how many comms professionals are currently measuring their work?
There are a few problems. The most common one I see is that lots of communication teams are only measuring outputs or activity. So they might be able to rattle off how many people have clicked on their newsletter, how many editions of the newsletter they have sent, how many articles they have published, how many people came to the town hall, how many people filled out the survey. And that's telling you about your level of busyness and your activity. It's probably going to tell you about your reach in your channels as well. Mm-hmm. It's not going to tell you about what any of that means. Like if 100% of people come to your town hall, like, so what? What does that mean? Did they go off and do anything differently? Did they feel differently? Did you, like, what was your objective with that? So if you're only measuring the outputs, I think you should measure your outputs, but if you're only there, then it's really hard to make the link between, well, we're all the way down here in the click rates and they're all the way up there at productivity and retention. Like that seems really far away. Mm-hmm. If you can start to measure your outcomes as well, it really helps. So if you think about the outputs are the things that you make or produce, like the amount of things that you create or the assets you do or the events you hold, that's all the numbers of the stuff you're doing. If you go up a level, then you're at outcomes. The outcome is what was the change in your target audience because of all that activity? And that's usually a change in behavior is what we're aiming to do. So you want employees to do A instead of B. Your outcome measure isn't did they read the articles about A to B or did they attend the meeting? But the outcome measure is did they actually change and now are they doing B?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can even push it a little bit further. The next level of measurement up is impact measurement. And that's where you're talking about the impact on the business. How did all of this impact the retention levels over the year, the levels of productivity, how efficiently information is delivered, whatever it is that's impacting on the business. So there are different levels. So if you're only at the first level, that makes it very hard. And one of the reasons I see people stuck there is, and it baffles me every time, but people come to me, say, at the end of a big campaign, and they're in a bit of a fluster and they're saying, how can I measure this? And I'm like, well, what were you trying to achieve? And they don't have a clear objective. So if you're not clear on exactly what you were trying to achieve, we're trying to go from here to here. You need to have a measurement from here and here to compare like the difference that you made. So it's about having clear objectives at the start and trying to push beyond just outputs.
Yeah, I think there's also a really interesting opportunity, like as a lot of us start to support more change and transformation and communications that support those big change and transformation initiatives, whether that's to do with AI rollout or whether that's to do with like broader business changes or strategy changes. Those are the things that really, if businesses want to see the impact and outcome of that stuff, there's lots that we do day to day in order to support that. So it's like quite literally drawing the line to see like what we're doing is supporting that, not just in views, clicks, and open rates, but actually like behavior change, as you said. So I put this section together with my colleague Casey. So we kind of wanted to surprise you with this. I did tell you we were going to do it, but we thought it was quite cool because there are, as we mentioned at the beginning, some common things, barriers that people are facing. And I just wanted to get a view of, if you're sitting in the seat watching this and you resonate with one of those barriers and you can't get out of it, what would Joanna do? What would be your advice to someone watching this for one of those common scenarios? So we've got 3 scenarios for you, and I'm going to pose them to you and you'll have to let us know how you would overcome that particular scenario. Now, the first scenario is that you have no time. You feel like you're drowning in tactical requests from stakeholders. It might be stuck creating newsletters or exec messages on that busy chase that a lot of us sometimes feel like we get on. What's the first practical step for an overstretched team to break out of being purely reactive so that they can carve out time to build a strategic case for investment?
I think that I would say, and I see this in people all the time, like nothing changes if nothing changes. No one is going to magically come to your desk one day and say, hey, would you like to just stop work for 2 hours and have some time to think? Like, would that be nice? I would really highly recommend either carving out some time for yourself, book a meeting in your diary with yourself that you do not change, you are wildly unavailable, you protect that time, and you start that carving out that time to sit and think about how could I create this business case. If you really feel like you can't do that, then please have a conversation with your manager about how to do that, to create some protected time. Maybe it's that when you come in on a Monday morning, you spend an hour working before you open your inbox or Teams. And I know that some people will be like, you could never. Well, you could, where you have that protected hour before you get distracted by everything else. Or maybe you have a Thursday where it's just a no meeting day for the whole team or something, but put in some sort of a system where there is some protected thinking time every week, and that will compound over time.
That's so true, because I feel like if the first thing you do in the morning is go straight to Outlook and Teams, you might just get lost in that cycle and you may never stop responding and reacting to messages or emails. So that's a great point. Now, the second scenario is no data. This was what people listed as their top biggest barrier. And you spoke about how you can start to grow there. But for those looking to build a business case for more headcount or better tools, how can people create evidence-based, something compelling evidence-based for investment when their current measurement or their tech doesn't really allow them to get that data?
I think you would be surprised at how much data already exists in your organization, but maybe you just don't know about it yet. Mm-hmm. So I would first go and access things that might have useful stuff in it, like your employee engagement survey, any exit interviews, any feedback you've been having, if you've done a comms audit. There's data already there that you should look at. There's also data from other departments that you can use. I had a client who was working in a retail organization, and one of the biggest problems in that company was they were delivering these big, heavy, like electrical appliances to different premises. And during the delivery, lots of them were getting damaged. And this was costing the company millions every year. And he was able to get funding for like a big scale, like hire an agency to do a communications campaign, because he said, do you know what? This is a communication problem. There are communication protocol breakdowns between the delivery drivers, the people putting them on the pallets. I can solve this problem for you. And he made the explicit link between those, and he got the money. So I think it's about like, look outside your department. He was able to talk to different people who had all the data about where it was all going wrong and how much it was costing. So that wasn't his data, it wasn't comms data. And the third place you can look for data as well is like, look outside your company. Like, you can use benchmarks and quotes from the state of the sector or other industry reports to pull in and say, well, look, this is what the current state is. This is how much it's costing when an employee leaves. We can mitigate these costs through XYZ. So if we don't have perfect data, don't worry. Like, one of the CFOs told me, I don't need perfect data. I need some data. I need some data to open the conversation. It doesn't need to be perfect. Estimates are fine.
That's true. Not expecting a magic dashboard to plug everything, but actually zooming out, speaking to different departments, doing what we do best, communicating. So love that.
Exactly.
And the third and final scenario is you've got no budget. So you've identified where you need that budget, but when faced, you kind of get the answer. There's just no budget. How can we start to maybe change some of that framing? And there might not always be a magic bullet, but how can you reframe that conversation to get over there's no budget?
I mean, sometimes when I hear the words, there's no budget, what I'm really hearing is this is not a priority right now, or I don't see the return in investment in this. So unless your company really is like just gone through layoffs and genuinely has no budget, it could just be how you're framing it. And it could just be about how we are telling the story about this is mission critical for the business. And this is not a nice to have. This is a need to have. You could even paint the picture of, you know, like, instead of saying I need €50,000 for a new intranet, you could say, well, do you know, this is how much it's costing in lost productivity every year for people searching through this old clunky intranet. It's actually costing you 4 times more what this new platform would cost. It will save us money in the long run by making this investment. So it's about like listening carefully for the signals. Is there really no budget, or is it just that you haven't framed it as something the business really needs to invest in?
Excellent. Now, lots of those insights and tidbits that you shared are all available in the guides that we created together, which I think is so cool. It'll probably be your internal comms investment Bible going forward. So, and also some of the stats, if you need some of those benchmarking stats, we've tried to weave them in as well. So that would be super useful. If people do want to ask questions, you can. I've seen one come in that I want to already ask. So I'm looking forward to asking that. Now, just one final time, Joanna, how can people get involved in that social competition?
Yes. So if you would like to win 100 quid, and who wouldn't, all you have to do is take a picture of yourself, grab your phone, open your camera at any time when me and Kaz are chatting. Just turn around and take a picture of yourself like this and post it on LinkedIn. Put any one-liner up above it. You can just say, hey, this was a great opportunity to learn about getting resources for my team, or whatever you want. Tag Unily, tag me, and we'll pick a winner next week. Easy.
Nice, excellent. And we are getting to time there. So we've got a couple of minutes left. So I've got some time for a couple of questions. And I've seen one come in from Becky Holt. Hi, Becky. So this question is, hi, I have so many ideas that I know will help us work more efficiently, but I'm so under-resourced that I can't seem to carve out the time to activate those ideas. I feel like in that kind of never-ending vicious cycle. Help, please, Joanna.
Yeah.
What's your advice there?
Well, do you know what's funny? Because I just started working with a new client who could have written that nearly word for word. This is a team who are super, super busy and are literally just drowning in stuff. And on one hand, they kind of know that they're doing too much stuff and it's not all value add, but they can't seem to figure out, how do I slow down to look at that and figure out what to stop and what to do more of. So how I am helping them is I have become their forcing function, is what I call it. I am the force that is going to come in and force them to stop. We're going to do some like offsites during the year and some check-ins and like force them to, like, you're not allowed to have your laptop, like it's banned, put it away. If you can't hire somebody to help you with this because you have no resources, you can be your own forcing function. So again, going back to that time of, can you carve out some time during the week where you are completely distraction free? Like, get approval from your manager to say, on Friday mornings, I'm not available in the morning. Like 9 to 12, that's my deep work thinking time. And then you can start to figure out, like, how do I get out of this tactical thing? How can I slow down a little bit? But if you're going all the time and you don't have any of that time to think, it's really hard to get out of that. So just find some time to start doing that.
Yeah, and I think also like socializing it with the business as well. So, as you get approval from your manager, like carving it out. And sometimes I put one of those Teams messages that says like, hey, I'm in a focus hour or whatever. So I think that's a really good tip. Now we have come up to time. So just wanted to give a couple of quick call to actions. This is actually both mine and Joanna's last webinar of the year, so we've got something to celebrate after this. If you want to see how technology with AI can start to relieve some of that burden and help you with your employee experience goals and your internal communication goals, there's a little click there. You're able to link through and see Unity Futures, our latest and greatest innovation, the first AI native EX solution. You can click through and see that there. Also, the next webinar that we have, not this year, thankfully, but next year in January, which we've got our first one scheduled, for those of you that are on SharePoint intranets or you're really looking to drive Microsoft 365 adoption or Copilot adoption, this is for you. I'll be joined with our host there as well. I'll be joined by Microsoft and Program Director of Digital Channels at Dentsu. So lots of things to get involved with, as well as, of course, this report. You can do some Christmas reading to get some extra insights there. I just wanted to say thank you again so much, Joanna, not just for this webinar, but also working with us on this report. We wanted to put something that was like out there that was really meaty and really enabled internal communicators to make better business cases. And I feel strongly that we've done that, and we've just built on it today. So thank you so much, Joanna.
Thank you so much. If you haven't got the guide yet, please download it. Unily will send you the details if you haven't got it already. It is written for you. If you work in internal comms, this is written for you. And at the back of the guide, there is a step-by-step template that you can use to put it all in practice. I'm all about practical action. So I hope it will just make the whole process easier for you. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, if you need any more help with it, just let me know. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for coming. And download the guide and see you in the new year. I hope you all have lovely holidays and thanks for joining. Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
so much. Bye.